So what James here, what he says is that, you know, it's illogical to be doing stupid things, obviously. And the fact that we've invented these safety precautions, it has effectively rendered survival of the fittest and natural selection obsolete. That idiot that's going to jump off the cliff can do it now and survive, versus before, you know, we'd have gotten rid of that idiot. Which leads me to my next point in trying to explain why it is we're doing these irrational and often illogical activities. And so, to delve into the psychological theory, I have 3 to examine and explain to you guys, which propose explanations as to why we do these things. The first theory is the flow state. It was developed by a Hungarian psych professor named... He authored the book Flow. Look up Flow. And so the flow state is his theory, and that deals with enjoyment and everything that has to do with the euphoric kind of mental state you find yourself in when you're in an activity that you're partaking in it. So that's kind of like the surfer dude mentality, like ride the wave. Like you're on the wave, and there's nothing else you're thinking about. You can enjoy the moment, and you're connected to that activity. So he took particular interest in experiential aspects of action, and so this has to do with extreme sports. But it has to do with the reason behind why we do extreme sports is due to happiness. All right, so we want to find happiness in extreme sports, and that's why some people do that. And a quote from him is, people who learn to control inner experience will be able to determine the quality of their lives, which is the closest any one of us can get to being happy. And so, basically, the explanation he proposes through this kind of surfer dude mentality is that we do things because we're happy to do them, and that means that some of us do extreme sports because it makes us happy. The next theory I'm going to explain is the theory of stress seeking, developed by Samuel Klausner, who thought that we humans are stress seekers. This notion is kind of, it seems counterintuitive because we tend to want to avoid stressful situations. We don't like being backed up on work. If we feel stressed in frustrating situations, which is the emotion that we get and reasons why we avoid stressful situations. But it really makes sense, because I don't know what's more stressful than being a step away from imminent death of a cliff and the ensuing fall. And so he argues that we actually seek stress because we get this strong emotional response. Now, we don't seek frustration, but we seek the euphoric mental state that we find ourselves in doing extreme sports. And so we seek stress, and we find it in extreme sport. And so a last quote by him, which touches on something else too, is the assumption is that man left to himself would prefer not to strive, which is interesting because this is a direct relation to evolution. If all we want to do is eat food, drink water, survive, reproduce, then extreme sport has no place in that picture. Yet we still do it. And he goes on to say that individuals who, in times of tranquility, seek adventure, who look for trouble, spoil for a fight, go through life with chips on their shoulder, are colloquially recognized as deviants. Now, that's not to say that every extreme sport athlete is a deviant. I'm not a deviant, Hopefully, I don't know. But it's to say that we still do extreme sports even though it doesn't make evolutionary sense. And an example of this is, a baby. We take care of a baby because they rely on us and they depend on us for food, for sleep, for shelter, to take care of them and help them grow. But as soon as you put a baby down in a crib, the first thing it does is it tries to get out. And it doesn't make sense because we provide all of its need, meaning there's a sense of curiosity and psychological fulfillment in these stress-seeking situations. And finally, I'm going to talk about the optimal level of arousal, or arousal theory. And this was developed by Marvin Zuckerman, who also created the sensation-seeking personality trait. And so he's written textbooks on the topic, and he's the leading, most widely regarded psychologist in explaining sensation-seeking to us. And so what the optimal level of arousal is a measurement that we all have a threshold to meet. And so all of you have a threshold that's unique to your individual lifestyle that is optimal. And so we reach that threshold through our level of excitement in our daily lives. So someone who has a low threshold or a low level of optimal arousal, that person is a rational safety seeker. They don't do anything crazy, they stick to their routine and are satisfied with minimal amounts of excitement. Versus adrenaline junkies who need their fix through repeated risking of their life and thus have a higher threshold to meet. And so that's what this theory explains. And in an interview, Marvin Zuckerman explains that someone who's not that high in sensation seeking, under peer pressure, when they try that activity, even though no harm comes from that activity, they'll still look upon it unfavorably because it doesn't respect their threshold. And so this is a threshold that exists within all of us and is the most widely recognized explanation for sensation seeking. And this is measured through the sensation seeking scale. So what the sensation seeking scale is a set of means and standard deviations that is a control. And so the means is the average of the results, and then the standard deviation is the average distance from the mean that you can use to compare where you fall with regard to the average. And so we have this control, and then if you want to find out how likely you are to take in sensation-seeking activities, you would take this survey, which asks you a bunch of different questions with respect to how likely you are to be an active sensation seeker. And the questions relate to the way you go about your life in terms of relationships or decision making, all different points that may indicate your level of sensation seeking ability. The four components of sensation seeking revolve around thrill seeking and adventure, experience seeking, disinhibition, and boredom. So the first, thrill and adventure seeking, is defined, and this is straight from the survey itself. It's defined as the desire to engage in sports or activities involving speed or danger. Now that's extreme sports right there. This is exactly what extreme sports are the effect of. And a sample question might be, I often wish I could be a mountain climber. So if you agree with that statement, that would be one check mark underneath thrill seeking. And in the end, it would relay to you your level of thrill and adventure seeking. The next component is experience seeking. So this is your willingness to participate in different mental states, your travel decisions, or leading a non-conforming lifestyle, an unconventional life, and taking weird decisions. And so the question reads people should dress in individual ways, even if the effects are sometimes strange. And of course, if you believe in that, then that's what you would do, and it would measure your level of experience seeking. Next is disinhibition, which has to do with just going out of control, going above and beyond the limits in terms of drugs and alcohol or partying. And so the definition is the desire for social and sexual disinhibition. And if the question presented itself, I like wild, uninhibited parties, that's pretty obvious, you fall under that category. And finally, your susceptibility to boredom. It's defined as the aversion to repetition, routine, and dull people. And if you avert from boredom, then you don't fall. You try to avoid those three things. And the question is, if you can't stand watching a movie that you've already seen before, the test will explain your level of boredom, susceptibility. But so at the end, these four components are measured by the sensation-seeking test, and so when you take it, they compare you to the averages, and they can identify how likely you are to be a sensation seeker, which has everything to do with extreme sports. And then next, there's a biological implication in your participation of extreme sports. Through neurotransmitters, the three, norepinephrine, dopamine, and serotonin, we get a chemical reaction that actually pushes us to partake in risky behavior. Norepinephrine functions to work the body as efficiently as possible, and the effects that it creates are an increase in heart rate, breath, quality of blood sugar, and the oxygen that gets to your brain. And at the same time, it shuts down your metabolic processes like digestion, you need to go to the bathroom, and this all has to do with the chemical response of adrenaline, the word you've all been waiting for me to say. Adrenaline is what we feel when norepinephrine activates, and it deals with our fight or flight response. And it either tells us to pump us up with adrenaline and fight that bear, or pump us up with adrenaline and run away. Next is dopamine, and there's so many uses for dopamine and so many bodily functions, but in terms of extreme sports, it explains reward and motivational behavior. The key component of human curiosity is based on dopamine. When I talked about that baby, the reason that the baby is trying to get out of the crib is because it's getting a dose of dopamine that rewards it for finding out new information on what's safe and what isn't. And it's also responsible for our sense of pleasure, and so the effects include a drastic increase in neural activity and manages our risk and reward decision making, and it also simulates addiction, which I'm going to get to later. And the last neurotransmitter that's really involved in extreme sports